Cool, huh? At Helena High.
16.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a bad email then, right?
Oh, they had donuts fourth period.
Why not fifth period?
Why not? Because this is fifth period and that's fourth period. It's a matter of simple physics. Okay, are there any questions from the total board? What's your question? Read it off for me.
Why did the
I know,
Americans
it's weird.
want Saipan and other marine islands?
Say it again.
Why did the Americans want Saipan and other
The
marine
biggest reason they wanted it is, you can see it in this map over here. Saipan and Tini are right here, and they can use these as bases for long-range B-29 bombers to begin to bomb Japan.
Yeah.
So that's what they'd be used for. So for example, the B-29 that carried the atomic bomb took off from Tinian, one of the three islands. Amazing planes. Is there another one? Another question
I
off
have a
that?
question.
Yeah.
I don't have to have the chart done, right?
No.
Okay.
What was the final, or the German final Russian victory?
Stalingrad. Actually, it's, yeah, the video said Stalingrad. There's another battle up there about the video. And after that, that would allow, by 43, especially by the summer of 43, the Russians to do a series of titanic offensives to push the Germans out of the Soviet Union. It's a pretty amazing thing. 80% of the German casualties will be on the Russian front. The Soviets won the war. Any other questions? Anything on the map?
I just drew in New Zealand, is that okay?
Yeah, I forgot New Zealand wasn't on there. I really just.
I was like, it's too fun.
The big thing is just so you know, just an idea where it was. Yeah, I
Where
didn't.
did you
New Zealand's by Australia.
Well, yeah, I know that.
I was just thinking. I was literally just
Outside.
typing down the countries, and I forgot New Zealand wasn't on the map. So that's fine. Any other ones? Were you able to find Leyte Gulf? Yeah, Leyte Gulf. It's right here. Biggest battle, biggest naval battle in history. Right here. There's an island called Leyte in the Philippines, right above the really big island in the Philippines. And that's Leyte. That was the first place the Americans, when they tried to retake their colony.
Oh, so I put it by New Guinea, but it's not by New Guinea?
No, it's right.
Sorry.
It's right here. If you look at this map, see where the big island in the Philippines is right there.
Okay.
Huge, confusing naval battle. It was something. The Japanese nearly won a big victory. The Americans ended up turning into a bigger victory for the Americans. It was a big deal. That's why I made it a big thing on your big map. Anything else? All right, rip the map off. Rip off the total war. Make sure your name is on it. I guess you can leave the other part. Well, no, rip it off. It's easier. No, I gave you a couple of.
Yeah, you said I could
because
bring it
you
Monday.
didn't get it.
You,
Civil War?
sorry.
No, you're right, because I thought you picked it up in AP Euro and then you did. And the map, and I know there's a lot of stuff on the map, but I just want to give you a good idea and what to look at. It's a very confusing thing, and by the way, nice job on the Pacific. You know, I looked at, oh, there's a dock there for Wake Island, and I looked at it again and realized, that's hard to find. I'm going to do this again next year. I made this again for this year, but I'm going to do it next year. I'm going to color in the dots to make them bigger, so it'll be easier to find. It was one of those things, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah. Oh well. All right, let's go take your notes out then. And I believe we are filming this.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it's live. It's taped down, but see, everyone smile, wave. The class is overwhelmed. Look at that. We've ran them out. Only the students that matter are left. Okay, what am I filming? All right, good, that's good.
The teacher said we're the only ones that matter.
Yeah.
It's like the nicest thing you've ever said.
Don't let it go to your head. All right, so just a couple of things. Where did we finish it here? National Socialist. What was the name of Hitler's book you wrote in jail?
Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf, which means my struggle. Did I talk about that at all?
No.
And we're not going to go into the details of where he wrote it. There was he actually was head. The Nazis were a tiny little party until the Great Depression. That made the Nazi Party, the Great Depression. But when he tried to overthrow the government back in 23, it was a disaster. He went to prison for a year and a half. And in prison, he would write down his book called Mein Kampf or My Struggle. Actually, he didn't write it. In prison, he had his personal secretary, Rudolf Hess, there, and Rudolf Hess just wrote down all the things that Hitler said. So Hitler walked around it was almost like a hotel. It was almost like house arrest. He had a very sympathetic judge. He walked around ranting and raving, and Rudolf Hess just wrote everything down. And so if you ever have the opportunity to read that, I had to read it for a college class, Mein Kampf, and it's awful. Not only is the toxic philosophy, but it's the hardest thing I've ever read. It just goes all over the place. It really does sound like somebody walking around ranting. So it talks about the evils of the communists, then the Jews, then the Treaty of Versailles. And then all of a sudden it goes page after page about syphilis. And then it goes back to, yeah, he was obsessed with syphilis. And then it goes back to Versailles. And it just on, and it's just this chaotic mess.
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. It's really hard.
There's little bits of brilliance in there. Hitler was not a brilliant man, but he knew certain things. What Hitler was is he was audacious. He would do anything. And people who are audacious, they'll just do anything. People are either taken aback, they think they have some kind of plan. It's hard when people don't act rationally. I think you probably know what I mean.
Yeah, if any of y'all want to try to read it, my mom got me a copy for Christmas.
Well, you really like history, so it makes sense, but...
They also got me a
And
bug
she
with a
has
Nazi
a bug,
card.
and Hitler stamps, and
And
Mein
Hitler
Kampf.
stamps. What the heck?
Man, don't
really
that's kind
scared.
you like that kind of stuff, but it is a
And
funny
blonde.
game. Oh, thank you, Mom, for Mein Kampf.
With blue eyes?
No, green eyes.
Okay.
But
Close.
one thing he did do in there is propaganda. Propaganda, he wrote a few things that are actually hard. You have to filter through to find the things on propaganda. And these things on propaganda, he had a knack. He knew how to sway the population. And in it, he made a couple very good points about propaganda. Keep it simple and repeat it over and over and over again. Which is just like advertising, isn't it? And there's one more great thing he said, and I like the quote so much that I have it on my wall. The great masses of the people will more easily fall victims to a big lie than a small lie. If it's a small lie, people might say, wait a sec, it's kind of a misleading thing. What are they getting at? A big lie? And they're just overwhelmed by it. It works. The big lie works. And everybody has done it. Well, not everybody has done it. Every country has done it, is what I meant to say. The United States has done it. The US government propaganda. Before the Vietnam War, before the Iraq War. Yeah, the big lie works because it sticks, it lingers. Even after it's refuted, it sticks. And we'll get to something called McCarthyism after World War II, and that's the big lie. It just sticks, even though he was a drunken idiot. He accused everyone of being a communist, and it just stuck. He actually was a drunken idiot.
McCarthy was?
Yeah.
Is that the one who was on the thing to during the Great Depression? The
No.
White House. Who was
That's
that?
MacArthur.
MacArthur. I know the name starts sounding
I thought it was
familiar,
McCarthy.
but actually MacArthur actually supported McCarthy. I shouldn't have said that. That's far too close.
That's horrible.
No, McCarthy was a drunken senator from Wisconsin.
Okay.
And literally in 1956, his liver exploded and he died.
Was he Irish?
Huh?
Was he Irish?
Hey now, stereotypes?
I'm Irish, so no.
No, there's drunks in every.
I know.
All right, so propaganda. But he laid down, remember fascism has basically nationalism, militarism, and business? Well, all those three elements are here, but then every party has to have some kind of, or every nation's fascist party has something unique for that country. And what for Germany were 5 things I'm going to go real fast that he lays out in Mein Kampf over and over and over again. And there's an underlying theme through the whole thing. First off, it's that Treaty of Versailles. We were weak and forced to sign this horrible Treaty of Versailles. Now what's important about this Treaty of Versailles is this concept of we were stabbed in the back. Germany had this very, and it is a toxic belief in Germany, that they didn't really lose World War I. They lost. You know, they were beaten, and they called a ceasefire. But there's a belief that they didn't really lose, but something weak inside Germany forced them to lose. And so, this horrible treaty was forced on Germany, which limited their army, they had to pay reparations, lost their colonies. Number two, who did it? And they had very convenient scapegoats. And so the point of this is, it's not the good German people. Scapegoat.
Okay.
It's not the good German people. I know.
I'm like,
I don't know what letter that is. Imagine that's a P.
Okay.
That helps, doesn't it?
Yes.
Me doing that really made it. It gave Germans an excuse. And this is clever politics. That say, it's not you. We're good and noble. It's somebody jealous of us who made us sign this treaty. And who are the scapegoats? Well, with fascism, who's the number one scapegoat? Gummies. The communists, the socialists. They did it. But also, and this might sound counterintuitive because even though the wealthy business interests supported Hitler, they blamed bankers, and there's a reason for this. Not all bankers, the bad bankers. They also blamed the Slavs. Poles are Slavs. Remember the Slavic nationalism down here. Russians are Slavs. This inferior race that is polluting good German blood. Liberals. Those liberals who made us weak. Now, in this context, liberal means those who want a democratic republic, like in the United States. Those who want equal rights for people. Those who want people to have suffrage, the right to vote. That's liberal in this context. The liberals made us weak because that allowed our enemies in. So by definition, fascists hate the idea of equal rights because not everyone's equal to them. And if unequal people have equal rights and have the right to vote, they will be taken over by the evil communists, etc. And then there's one more. They also hated scientists too, but that's another story. Who led them all? And this is the key element that runs through this entire thing. Jews. It's Jews. Jews were leading communists, they believed. The myth, the horrific racist myth from the Middle Ages about the Jewish bankers. Slavs. The biggest population of Jews in the world were in the Soviet Union. The second biggest in Poland, these Slavic countries. The Jews must run these inferior people. And then liberals, a lot of leading intellectuals were Jews. Now, they got to power by blaming the communists, but underlying it is this anti-Jewish rhetoric. And since this was the most racist time in our history, in world history, really anti-Semitic, all over the world, this just been, oh yeah, the Jews did it. And because the Jews were only about 1% of the German population, why not blame them? It's a tiny group. And most Jews were assimilated very much in the German culture. Jews fought alongside every other religion or ethnic group in World War I. In fact, the lieutenant who recommended Hitler for a second Iron Cross was Jewish. Isn't that ironic? Jewish's great-grandfather very well could have been Jewish. Or did I say Jewish's great-grandfather? Hitler's great-grandfather very well could have been Jewish. Almost all the records about Hitler were destroyed when Germany annexed Austria, including records of Hitler dodging the Austrian draft and fleeing to Germany before World War I. He didn't want people to know he was a draft dodger. I think it's just an interesting little tidbit. But, scapegoats. Why are they so mad? They're jealous of the glorious German people. This concept of the master race. The master race. Superior Germans. And this should remind a couple of you of Nietzsche. You remember Nietzsche? Yeah. Well, This concept that Germans were superior, so they're intensely social Darwinistic. But what fits in with the master race is this concept. Remember social unity? We mentioned that before with fascism. They called it Das Volk or Das Mass to make that an English term. Das Volk means the people, all the people together. Separate, we're weak. We must all unify as one people of Germans, or we will be conquered. And this they brought back, or a better way to look at it is they continued that fake philosophy that Germany had before World War I, of German culture, and that something special about Germans. And what was the fake science thing about the German race? What did they call them? Aryans. That fake science that somehow Germans are a special race of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, and everyone's jealous of our superior race. I repeat, this is fake science. It's science-y. And there's a name for it. They talk a lot about we must breed these, called eugenics, which is actually very popular in the U.S. too, where the idea is that you should not mix races. And in fact, they believe that you could, they talked about breeding Aryans for a superior German race. They set up these very creepy, horrific breeding farms. It's really weird. Where it would be basically young German women, blonde-haired, blue-eyed women would go, and then they would be, impregnated. I mean, it was just creepy. And by the way, all the bad connotations you can think of that, But the point is, they pushed this so they could say we're special and everyone's inferior, and I will bring us back to greatness. But you notice, we'll see Hitler again in a couple minutes. A little video clip of him and a couple of him talking. Hitler has brown hair, brown eyes.
He's like short and weird.
Science. They figured it out through science. They measured the perfect Aryan face. Because not everybody, you could have blonde-haired, blue-eyed parents and not have a blonde-haired, blue-eyed child. So they did science. They measured the width of the forehead, the length. This was an important one. This measurement of hairline to bridge of the nose. That was an important measurement for them. Width of the eyes, nose, etc. And they had little measuring instruments they would use. And guess what the perfect Aryan face looked like? No way, looked just like Hitler. So Hitler must have been the perfect Aryan. Yeah, garbage science. 4, we must all follow, though, if we are vulnerable, we must need a strong leader. Der Führer. Der, so it's very masculine. That's the masculine idiom. But Der Führer. Der Führer means the leader, just like El Duce. And this slogan would be all over Germany. All over. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. One people, one nation, one leader. Everywhere. With his face. Or idealized Aryans. Or him with young, idealized blonde-haired, blue-eyed children. Stalin did the same thing. That's all totalitarian dictatorships have. Dictators have them with generic children.
That's so terrifying.
It is.
That's really creepy.
I think I'll have to find this, but there's a great series of Stalin with this little child, and it would be all over. Use it all the time. And the ironic thing is Stalin had both of his parents arrested and put in the gulag, their prison system. He had these pictures with his child. Dictatorships are fun. Last, if the German people are going to really prosper, they need land. It's called Lebensraum, or living space. They need living space for the Germans to truly be great. Actually, his vision was that they could all be farmers. Where is their living space? Where communists and Slavs and Jews dominate. Here. So what he's talking about, combined with militarism and fascism, war here. He's saying from day one there's going to be a war. And the war is going to be a titanic clash with the Soviet Union. There's no plan. He has no plan, except for there will be war. We need war, and the war will be against the Soviet Union. And so the war in the West that's going to happen between Britain and France and Germany, that's the way to look at that is Hitler wants to make sure that they are out of the war, so they don't have to fight a two-front war like they did in World War I. So it could be here. That's the whole thinking. And he's obsessed with it. And when he would take power, the business leaders that supported him didn't really believe he really meant all this. But he did. Totally meant it. They thought they could control him, and they were mistaken. Hitler, for lots of reasons, could not be controlled. He was a lot more clever than they gave him credit for, but clever like a predator, not like clever as in intelligent. There's a difference. And where's mine? This is good camera. This is good footage of me looking around. We'll cut that out.
We'll fix it in post.
So, the German government, I have written up, so let's just leave it up here. The German government at this time was a democracy called the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic. I know it's a W, but W's in German are pronounced as a V. It's actually a really pretty town in eastern Germany, and it wasn't destroyed in the war. And so if you go to Weimar, it's right about here. It's like it was in the 16th century. Most German places today, if you go there and it looks like it's old, it's been rebuilt after the war to look old. And they created a parliament, the Constitution. Their parliament's called the Reichstag, and different than the United States or Britain, for that matter, is proportional. If a party gets 20% of the vote, they get 20% of the seats in the Reichstag. There's a lot of actually good things about that, but there's some bad things. The bad things is that allows for a lot of parties. There were over 30 major parties in Germany. So the government was weak. It's what we call a coalition government. Coalition government means no one party had domination. How they did it was, whatever party had the majority, they would pick the executive. But no one had a majority, so parties had to come together. So you can imagine, all it takes is one party to get mad, they drop out of the coalition, government collapses, they need a new election. And so they had election after election after election, especially when the Great Depression began. The parties looked weak. The democracy looked weak. This actually can be a real problem. Italy has this, and this is the truth. In 1974, has the same kind of government by proportion. They had 9 elections in 1 year. Yeah. So there's some good things about having proportional, but these are the bad things. Then the Depression hit. And there were a bunch of right-wing parties, and they kind of were absorbed by the Nazi Party, which was actually a really small party. But because of the Depression, they said, we have a solution. Strong government will take over. And what's the other biggest party? But they didn't have a majority. The Communists. Those were the 2 biggest parties. And then a coalition in the middle that were scared of both. Government was paralyzed. The Depression hit Germany worse than it hit the US. Unemployment in industrial cities was over 50% in Germany. It was chaos. There's fighting in the streets between Nazis and communists. There's fighting in the Reichstag. The Nazis would all come in dressed up in brown uniforms, the Nazi members of the Reichstag, and they would, like, all at once, they'd all stand up and charge across the Reichstag and go beat up another party. It was chaos. Nothing was going on. Actually, this was part of the Nazi plan. Make sure government doesn't work, and then we turn around and say, see, liberal governments don't work. We need dictatorships. But in December 1932, the Depression was at its worst. Remember, this was the worst time in the US. Roosevelt was just elected. December 32, there was another Reichstag election, the 3rd one that year. The Communist Party gained seats, and the Nazis actually lost seats. Who panicked? The middle. Like, communists might just keep growing. And we'll be yes, exactly. So what did that middle coalition, that's actually about 10 major parties that formed this coalition. Who did they go to make sure the communists didn't take power? The Nazis. By the way, why I'm doing this, whenever they draw the parliament, they drew them like this. This is the seat. And so on the, this is your right would be the Nazis, here would be the communists, these areas in the middle. So they always go like this, and they would say the middle, and they go like that. There's a reason why I was doing that. I was like, why are you making a V? No, actually I'm thinking that in my head. So that there is actually a reason to why I'm doing that. I know you think there's a lot of things I do, there's no reason. And you're absolutely right. But this one, there was a reason. They went to the Nazis. And since the Nazi party was the biggest party of this new coalition, who became the head of state in January 1933? The head of state's called a chancellor.
I'm gonna guess Hitler.
Yes, because the arrow points to Hitler. And so the head of the Christian Democratic Party there, for example, a guy named von Papen, he became the vice chairman. It was a coalition government. Hitler's now the chancellor. He was never elected to parliament, it's just the leader of the party is chosen as chancellor. And so he did it all democratically. But once he took power, at first, not a lot happened for the first month and a half, and then the building where they meet, the Reichstag, caught fire. The Reichstag fire. And it would remain in a condition of disrepair till the war ended. No, let me rephrase that. Until the Cold War ended. They were going to rebuild it when the World War II was over to this dramatic, huge capital that Hitler was going to call Germania. Yeah, it's weird. But then the Cold War happened. And so this hulk of this building that would also be, there'd be combat when Berlin fell in 1945, just was there. So it wouldn't be until the Cold War ended and it'd be rebuilt in 1991. If you go there today, this huge building, there's still remnants of the fire and shell holes and machine gun holes in the front of the German parliament from 1945. It's pretty wild. And then this grand building built on top of it. It's really amazing. But it caught fire. Now, to this day, we're not sure what happened. They caught a guy who definitely appears to be involved. He was a babbling Dutch communist. Yeah, from the Netherlands, named Maurits von Blatter. You won't need to know his name. They caught him naked in a sub-basement of the Reichstag, holding oily rags, had cans of gasoline, and essentially a lighter.
No.
We don't know. It seemed to be too big for one person to start, and so everyone believed that Hitler started it. Not Hitler, but the Nazis. Because, what did he say? The communists did it. Then this is an act of civil war. And this allowed him to declare a state of emergency. Martial law. And there's a quirk in the Weimar Constitution. In a state of emergency, the Reichstag can make the chancellor dictator until it's over. When did it end? For Hitler, it ended April 30th, 1945, when he put a bullet in his head. Committed suicide. The state of emergency, it's called the Enabling Act. Reichstag gave Hitler the power of dictator, which he would hold for the rest of the time. All done constitutionally to the German Constitution. And how did it pass? What's the first thing they did before the Enabling Act was passed? Hitler had every member of the Communist Party arrested. Every member, so it passed easily. And then after the Enabling Act, he arrested members of every other party. So it became a one-party state. Nazis. And anybody know what Dachau is? Actually, it was it's a little town, and there was a factory there making munitions during the war. What's Dachau?
Was it concentration?
The very first concentration camp, 2 months after the Reichstag fire, where they put in all the communists and leaders of the labor union for their protection. That's what they called it. Dachau was the first concentration camp. By 1942, there'd be over 1,000 in this system. It was just for men, and it's only political prisoners. Most of the time people think, and it's understandable, when people started talking again about the Holocaust in the 1960s. People no one wanted to talk about it for 20 years after the war. But everyone thinks Jews. No, Jews weren't put in there unless they're communists, or labor leaders, or members of the other party. And so Dachau would be used and other concentration camps would follow, all for political prisoners. What would happen with Jews would be harassment by the state for the first couple of years. And then eventually, is it written up here? 1935, the Nuremberg Laws. And the Nuremberg Laws would take away all rights from Jews. Take away all the rights.
Is it Nurn or Nuren?
Nuren. If you see in English, there's an EN, but in German it's just NURN. Yeah, it's Nurn. But when someone writes it in English,
It's the EM?
yeah.
Okay.
If you see it like Munich in German is München, same kind of thing. And so the Nuremberg Laws, but that's the actual name of the law, is Nuremberg. Most political rights were taken away from Jews. And the plan was by Hitler, the Nazi plan was just to make them leave. Make Jews leave. And by 1939, over half of all Jews in Germany left. They left Germany. Now, this was an incredibly racist time. In the US too. And so a lot of countries wouldn't take it. So unfortunately for a lot of the German Jews, the only place they could go was Poland. The United States took some, but actually sent a lot back. It was a racist time. Something you don't want to brag, the US doesn't really want to brag about. But that's true. Didn't take them. No, we don't want Jews here. And in 1938, the really big measure took place. And it's called Kristallnacht, or the Night of the Broken Glass. And there's some political things that happened there, but what the deal was, it's called a pogrom, where it was basically an organized attack on Jews, where Jewish shops and homes were attacked, some were burnt, some Jews were lynched. And this was a major effort to get the last Jews to leave. And my brother married a Jewish woman from Chicago, and so by that, whoever the mother is, that's where they go if they're according to Judaism. If your mother's a Jew, your children are Jews. So my niece and nephew are Jews. But they came, for over Christmas break to Montana. Christmas is both secular and religious. And so I never forget, we went, I think they'd been married for like a year. And this is a while ago. And we went to the church my parents go to, a congregational church, and they're doing Christmas Eve, so they're doing Christmas carols, whatever. And this was totally new to her. She was like, wow, this is amazing. You people are wild. They had to know a lot because Christmas is so dominating in the United States, but still, it was really interesting. But then they sang the hymn they were going through. It's just Christmas hymns, and it was Silent Night. But it's a German song. Schlag Nacht. And that Nacht goes, she knew about that. And that really, that's immediately thought of that. Kristallnacht. Something we just don't think about because you don't think about it if you don't have this in your background. And that was really interesting to talk to her about that because it's something I just never thought about. Because I know, understood it, but not in the same context. It's really good when you get those kind of personal stories like that. Really smart woman too.
For the Christmas truce? Whatever.
Yeah, and they sang that. Okay, so when we think of it now as the final solution and what's going to happen, that was when war began. And they started conquering areas with a huge population of Jews, like Poland or Western Soviet Union. and now they can't get rid of them. And you can't have an enemy with them. That's where you get genocide. I'm not saying that what they did before the war was good. It was horrific, but it was different. Because once it became total war, now we got to get rid of them. And they used that as a justification. So, with that, a couple more things that happened. Germany did begin to rebuild their army, slowly. But the big thing Hitler did is got the economy going. Got the economy going. How did he get the economy going? Autobahn, bridges, roads. They actually tripled the size of the army, but the army was only 300,000 men then. So it's still a tiny army. Hitler just pushed, just gradual. So we're going to start this, and we'll finish this on Monday. And this is actually something I was going to do earlier, but now I'm going to show it here. I really like it, and also it's a way to discipline me to get through these events. I just think this is just fascinating as heck. So I can't help it. I want to. The events that lead up to these wars just amaze me. I can't get past that. It just amazes me, especially when I know what's going to happen. And so I'm always like, you could have done something different and avoided this hell. So this is a way to discipline me. So it's called Lost Peace. Do you remember that movie we saw called The Killing Field? Remember the World War I one? It's the same one. We're going to watch the second half of it. It's the same series, but it's called Lost Peace.
Isn't it in pen?
Yeah, pen or pencil, this one doesn't matter.